So that's just one part of the foundation. Another part is where we receive information. So, in kindergarten, you've learned that you receive through your five senses: your touch, your taste, your smell, your hearing, and your seeing. But if something is amiss in getting that information in, like say a child is hypersensitive to sound and they're covering their ears all the time, well, that's a real bumpy road for that child because of that distortion coming in. Sometimes they just turn off their auditory system because of that overstimulation to their sensory system. They could have oversensitive taste, and so they're a really picky eater, or textures bother them, or touch. A child that's squirming all the time is trying to maybe get away from those clothes that are driving them crazy. And you think they're hyperactive. They can't even sit still for a second, but they're really hypersensitive to touch. There's lots of sensory things that can cause misfires in the brain. But the really cool thing is God has given us just the most amazing gift in our brain, and that is plasticity. Now, that means that if you stimulate the brain, it grows. So whatever stimulation it gets, it builds connections. And if there's enough of them with enough repetition over time, then you build a whole new pathway. So what happens in our brain, we've got 3% cell bodies, but 97% of our brain are connections. It's these things that called dendrites that go between. Oh,
you're back, Jan.
There you are. I'm
you
back.
Just froze. We're like, what happened?
Oh, I just totally lost the connection. It just went away. So can you still see you can't still see my screen, can you?
No, you'll have to screen share again.
Okay, let me.
So.
All right, sorry about that. Living out.
Okay, you made it back pretty quick.
Thanks for hanging in there. So where I was talking about the brain and the makeup of the brain. 3% are those cell bodies, 97% are connections. When you stimulate the brain, it makes the connections, and then that goes to our function. It helps our function. So most of the time we are focused on function, especially as homeschool moms. We want the function to be higher. We want them to have their math facts. We want them to be able to read, all those kind of things. We're very much focused there. But if we can change that and think differently and go, how can I stimulate that child's brain to make the connections so that the function comes? That's where we have to make that change. And that's through the use of plasticity. Now, if you look right here in the center, well, it's a little bit to the right, but that dark part right there, that's the cell body. And the things off to your right, those are your dendrites that grow. And like I was saying, when there's brain stimulation, then those dendrites grow and build connections. I just wanted to give you kind of an example of that in just one of the areas that we work with. So this little boy's name was Jim. He was about 10 years old and a really bright little guy, but he came home very distraught one day and just told his mom, "You just don't know what it's like to be me." And I mean, she said that she had some psychology background and she felt like she was looking at a suicide victim. I mean, a suicide potential right there, because of how he was viewing himself. He had a really hard time writing. And so this has been years and years ago. He probably would have been labeled now dysgraphic, which means the connection doesn't work well to your hand and you just can't write. Well, he was so brilliant. He said, it feels like fluff to me. My hand just feels like fluff. So how could you move your hand if it felt like fluff? And so in his brilliance, he was describing an immature central nervous system where the connection was not being made from his brain all the way to his hand. Now, they did get him some neurodevelopmental help back then. And this is an example of maybe that same brain cell after stimulation might look like this. And it's kind of like roadmaps. It's like you can get from point A to point B, but it's a whole lot quicker when you can just go straight there instead of all over the place. This cell is going to connect with a lot more cells and make that pathway easier. So the cool thing about this is that Jim is now a oral surgeon. He's a dentist. He works with both hands. And so his full potential was really realized through taking care of that root cause. And for him, it was a tactile issue.